everybody. Welcome back. So today we are talking with Sonia Gonzalez. I've recently had the pleasure of being on their podcast in their studio, where we were talking about pretty much everything to do with AI, gamification, game-based learning, all of these rich and wonderful things that we use in corporate learning to try and engage learners, to try and elicit a response, to try and change behaviors, and try and make things just a little bit more interesting. So today I have the pleasure of having Sonia join me on my podcast. Sonia, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sure this is going to be an amazing hour, right?
Let's
So
see.
one of the amazing things that I was privileged to see when I was at your offices was that you're starting to make games much more contextual by adding some information in AI. Generally, we've been talking about RAG systems, retrieval augmented generation, where you can make the responses that you get much more contextual by adding data or showing a large language model where to look for data. So we're moving into the space where now the platform companies like yourselves that had some kind of offering out in the market are now able to tailor that offering a lot more and make that much more relevant to learners. But this isn't really without challenges, right? So you guys have done it, suppliers are doing it. It's exciting on the supply side, but when clients are starting to think about how they implement things on their side, there may be challenges. We might want to think about what business problems we're trying to solve before we then make the case for budgets, and then we make sure that things can be implemented. So when we think about that space, let's talk a little bit about the problems and challenges that we're solving with this new kind of system that you're bringing to market.
Yeah. So, you are more familiarized with this technologies than me. As far as I could see, these systems have bring lots of changes, especially because we were talking, RAG systems were a little bit old at the moment because of lots of reasons. First of all, they were too static, too manual. Everything needed to be implemented. You needed to have a look to spreadsheet, dashboards, and these didn't really allow the systems or the strategies to evolve with the needs of the learners. And this was a very important challenge that corporations had, because they couldn't really adapt to different roles, different skills. And this obviously had an impact on the business as well. Obviously, they also had a lack of personalization on all these tools. So everyone was measuring the same way, same criteria, and you couldn't individualize the performance, but also the approach you wanted to have with them and the progress you wanted to implement. Obviously, the integration was also very affected here with the business outcomes, because the data wasn't automated at all. It took a while. Normally, it depends obviously on the system we are talking about, but these made L&D teams, especially, not being able to respond as fast as they should be. And this, again, is affecting how business are responding. So obviously, overall, this was affecting the learning experience, because as I said, you couldn't really adapt to them, their needs, to their roles, to their profiles. So, this kind of learning was quite passive. And this is what we are kind of fixing with Gen IA now, that we can adapt much more and fix all these problems we were having with RAG systems previously.
And it's quite an exciting time because previously, I remember working with a handful of different departments in the past. And when they wanted to do something, as right now we say it's kind of rudimentary, it's something that we should just be doing in the AI space. But in implementing RAG systems, there was a lot of back and forth previously with IT teams. How do we get access to either Azure or AWS to build some of these things? How do we lay our fingers on the right skills to build these things? So it's exciting for me to see that on the supplier side, we're now seeing these capabilities come to market in a way that can be directly used with L&D teams. But it poses a question, right? And the question is that you have teams, L&D teams, who are usually, they're fairly accustomed to using either off-the-shelf content, or if they need bespoke content, they go somewhere else and they make that and they put it on a different system. So when we think about the transformation of Gen AI, it's not only in the content and the platforms, but it's also about how you use these different things together. How does that lead us to benefits in a learning organization?
Well, I think in many ways because we are fixing all these problems, right? So now we have more automation on the content. So you learning and development teams don't need to be creating and producing constantly different content. This is more automized now, thanks to Gen IA. So everything is more dynamic. So updates are faster. You get more data, more accurate data, and you can do personalized stuff now because you can adapt to different profiles and so on. So this is going to be affecting lots of things. First of all, learning and development teams. They are going to be transformed completely because they are not going to produce as much content, but they will have a more strategic role right now, just shaping how those pathways, learning pathways will be or will look like at least. But also for the learner side of things, they will have a totally different experience because they will be more personalized. It will be more tailored to their needs. And this obviously will impact again on the business because we don't have all these issues we were mentioning before. We are fast now, we have data, we have automation, and this creates a more efficient pathway for everybody, especially for the learning and development teams. And this is going to affect business in a positive way. We're cutting a lot of different processes just to get to the point and get to fix the problems we had once upon a time. So yeah, this is a very exciting moment because lots of things are going to change and we are just in the middle of it.
It is. It's exciting stuff. The reason, for me, one of the reasons that it's exciting is I remember doing, when was it? It was about 3 years ago, maybe. I was doing an RFP for a platform. So fairly typical stuff that you do in an enterprise situation. And I was looking at the various platform providers that were out there and getting to this idea of having this kind of personalization workflow where depending on what the individual has done, depending on what the individual knows, depending on what they have touched in the ecosystem and all of the data that comes from that, you can deliver something that is relevant for them. And the example that I usually give is that you drive, Sonia, right? You drive a car?
Yeah, more or
Right.
less.
So when you have different countries, right? I was in Paris, and the driving there, right? I was watching and I was looking and seeing all of the cars go round and round and all the horns getting beeped, and in the UK that wouldn't happen. But then I was in India for a while, and again the driving very, very different over there. So we'll come back to that at some later date, I think. But the point I was going to make was that when you have a car, you have either a manual or an automatic, and maybe you have 2 or 3 pedals that you have to push. And in a situation where you need to stop the car, you want to be able to differentiate between a learner or an employee that knows how to stop the car, knows how to put the 2 feet down on the brake and the clutch to stop the car in an emergency stop, or the one that will press the accelerator and then press the brake and then try different combinations before they can stop the car. Those are 2 different performance outcomes based on 2 different levels of psychomotor skill, 2 different levels of knowledge. Take that to a corporate environment, and it's helpful that we can differentiate between a learner that needs more support and a learner that needs less support. And this is really the key point around personalization. And it's exciting for me because, as I say, 2-3 years ago, I was looking at platforms, and it was, generally speaking, you couldn't do this in a platform. Maybe 1 or 2 providers were able to do this kind of thing. And now, from what you're saying and what you've been working on, it's kind of something that the market can give almost as an off-the-shelf capability, which is amazing. I think that's very exciting.
It is, indeed. It is.
So let's talk about those 2 things slightly differently, because one is Gen AI and all of the stuff that we say about content development and being able to make pictures of cats and show them to your friends and, this kind of thing. And then on the other side, you have this kind of RAG approach where you say, well, your company's policies, your company's procedures, your client database, your CRM can be used for sales or whatever it is that people are doing. Your technical manuals can be used by your manufacturing teams, these kinds of use cases. So what are you seeing out in the market as use cases that your clients are coming to you with?